Hey guys, it's Drew again. Well, we've all said it before. If I had to sell off part of my collection, I would do it in a heartbeat. But would you really? Well, today I want to talk about the two different times where I sold off a majority of my collection, the reasons why, and how I moved on after that. So let's check it out. So life after selling your collection. It's actually true, and I did it twice. Sort of. I mean, I sold off two huge chunks of my collection in different times, about a decade apart. And I want to talk about why, how that affected it, how it affected my collecting, and where I am today because of it. And to be honest, I'm glad I did, and I have no regrets on either time. Both of them were for completely different reasons, but both of them had to do with my wife. So let's tell the story. So for years, I had tried to put together a Hall of Fame type collection. So anybody that played in the Hall of Fame, I wanted one card, playing days card from everybody that was in the Hall of Fame from 1900 on. And a lot of guys do this kind of collecting, and this was great because this really helped expand my my knowledge and my ability, my learning process to be able to find out about players I had never heard of, like Chick Hafey or Epa Rixey, and I learned about why these guys were in the Hall of Fame, and also it helped me expand to understand there's so many other cards out there besides T206 or Gaudies when it comes to pre-war and in post-war as well. So it was a fun collection, and I put it together, and I did achieve it. And I remember the very last card that I picked up in that was a 1914 Polo Grounds Honus Wagner, which I still have today. And I love this card. And man, this was like the crowning jewel, and I'm so glad that I was able to pick up a card like this for the very last card in the set. And it's a beautiful card, and I love it. But but after I was done with putting that entire set together, I moved on to the next project, and it just became something that I had and not something that I dealt with. And having it was different than searching for it. And I think we've all done that. You know, we're looking for that perfect card, that perfect grade, that perfect price, sort of the perfect storm of everything for the one thing that we really want. And then when we finally achieve it, we celebrate and we show it off, and we talk about it, and you look at it and you cherish it. But then as time moves on, it just becomes another one of those things in the pile, so to speak, that of past achievements, and we're always looking for the next thing. That's kind of part of being a collector. Well, my wife had planned a 40th birthday trip for me, obviously a long time ago, and it was a great time. Well, a couple years later, when she turned 40, I wanted to return the favor. I wanted to do something for her, and we didn't really have the budget and all this other stuff, and I thought, well, what can I do to make it special? So what I did was I actually took my cards from that Hall of Fame run, and I sold them. I sold almost all of them. In fact, I only kept like 6, maybe 7 of the pre-war cards, including the Honus Wagner, because it is special and I love it. And you've seen these cards before, including the Babe Ruth, my Lou Gehrig, Ty Cobb, and a few others. But I sold off a majority of them. And then what I did was I took that money and I gave it to her as a gift for her 40th birthday, and told her I wanted her to plan a trip. And it wasn't like a sacrifice where I was trying to be the martyr of like, oh, I sold my baseball card collection so you could do something fun. It was more like a gift out of love for her, because she had put so much time and effort and love for me to take my trip. So after that point, I was kind of flailing around in my collecting. I didn't really know where to go or what to get, and so I picked up cards here and I picked up cards there, and like, oh, I love this card, and oh, what a great deal, especially at card shows. My collection was just growing by volume more than anything. And then in 2019 something happened, and this was a scary time. My wife had a medical emergency, and she's fine, but in that time of dealing with her having an emergency surgery and then the recovery and all this stuff, it really got to me to thinking about my collection. I love my collection, but I didn't spend much time with my collection, and when it comes down to it, that wasn't what was important. And really what happened was, I felt if something happened to me, my collection would end up being a burden to my family. They don't understand this stuff. They don't appreciate it, and it's fine. It's my collection, and they're fine that I do this. But they didn't, you know, it would be a problem for them to figure out how to sell it, how to get value out of it, and that's a struggle that a lot of us have. And the thought of what do we do with our collection? You know, when we talk about, well, you know, I've got all these graded cards, that makes it easier to sell. That's true, but what about like this? You know, like do they know how much that catcher stuff can go for, where to sell it, how to sell it, or is it have any value at all? So in my case, it was like I have so much stuff, and I didn't care anymore about a lot of it. So what I decided to do was for no financial reason whatsoever, was to thin down my collection, to really focus in, to fine tune it. So what I did was I sold a huge chunk of my collection, and now I'm very specific about what I pick up. And you know, if you've watched my videos the last few weeks, you saw that I picked up six cards at the National, and that is a lot for me, because what I do is I have special cases for cards. These cards, I pick up these cards, something has to come out of these cases. This is just a limitation. It's a parameter I've put on myself in my collecting. If I pick something up, I need to get rid of something, because I still don't want my collection to ever be a burden. This is a hard way to collect. But after I sold this big chunk, I want to show some of the cards I did keep. The cards I kept were sentimental cards. I kept stuff like my 53 Bowman and set, and this is the Mickey Mantle from the set. I kept my player collections. Player collections like my Carl Erskines, because you know, he just has a big impact on me and who he was as a player and everything else. So this is the Red Heart Carl Erskine, and of course I kept the set collections, some of the sets I put together, including the Red Heart, which is still my favorite set that I have. And then I kept sentimental cards, like this one, like my Satchel Paige. And my wife had given me this card, and I've told the story about how she looked and looked on eBay and kept losing auction after auction, and she finally found one and gave it to me for Christmas years and years ago. There's no way I would ever sell this card, because it just means so much to me sentimentally. But you know, I survived, and I've enjoyed collecting and getting into YouTube and getting into sharing this community and sharing my collection and my stories. That has been the most appealing part of my collecting. You know, and I did go to the National, and I had great times, and I picked up some insane cards that I never thought I could possibly get. But you know what? It wasn't about those cards. It was the fact that every one of those cards that I picked up, I was with somebody. I was with a friend. But for me, yeah, there's life after selling your collection. Would you ever do it? I don't know. We say it all the time, you know, like, well, if something happened with my family, I would sell my collection. But man, it's hard, because there's an attachment to some of this stuff. But if you can look and say, hey, you know what, I would sell off a chunk to be able to get this or do that, then yeah, there is life after selling stuff. And that's a little bit of my story. So anyway, I appreciate you coming along and just taking a look at some of the cards and hearing a little bit of my tale. But until next time, you guys be good.